Happy August to everybody who's waking up into August. It's the second day of the month. Karibuni sana. CT Muga has today's proverb.
The chief's wealth is his people.
The chief's wealth is his people.
Not the thieves. The chief's wealth.
Oh, that could be too.
The chief's wealth is the people.
Chifu.
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 Haya, mali ya chifu ni ya watu wote.
No. Umejaribu lakini.
Wow, that's rich. That's really rich. I must congratulate you for that.
Umejaribu sana.
Trying to change it. Okay, our guest this hour, welcoming him to the hot seat, is Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen. Karibu sana, Senator.
Thank you, Eric, Ndu and Charles.
You know, you've been on the show a number of times, but never here.
Yes, I know. The first time I was here is because of, it's during the COVID pandemic period. Still there, but during the peak, the first round. And so I'm very glad to be here. It's a very beautiful studio and to be part of this very good conversation with people who I know for sure that they mean well for the country and have also very strong insights on various matters that affect our country. So I'm really, very, very happy that you've invited me.
Kupakwa mafuta kwa mgongo wa chupa.
We can end this conversation now. It's done. Finish.
In fact, what we need to do is just say ni sawa.
Asante.
Tumekubali.
Tutakupigia kura tena. Ingawaje
You should all come and register in Elgeyo Marakwet.
Yo kura umepata. Mheshimiwa, we are here to talk about the bottom-up approach.
Yes.
This is one conversation that's happening. You are among those who are deep in the center of the hustler movement, hustler conversation. So in terms of sloganeering, first of all, these guys, you went with the hustler conversation. Correct. Everybody has heard it. Everybody understands hustler.
Yes.
You've gone now, we've come up with a new slogan, the bottom-up economic model. Hey. So everybody is...
Big words.
Yeah, big words.
What Governor Lonyangapo would have said, Kiingereza tupu.
Kiingereza mingi. Or even your leader would have said, Kizungu mingi na catwalk. This bottom-up approach, or bottoms-up, we actually don't even know. It's bottoms-up, bottom-up. We've seen some of the leaders in your wing going to media houses and attempting to explain what bottom-up is. We saw Mheshimiwa Alice with her attempt to do that. The other day we also saw Mheshimiwa Gathoni wa Mushomba also attempting to respond to bottom-up and explain what bottom-up is. So let's try it this time round, okay? With Kipchumba Murkomen.
And maybe I may not get it.
What is the difference between the trickle-down and the bottom-up approach?
Thank you, Eric. I'm really happy that, first of all, we are having this conversation. You should understand that we are the only now political group that are being asked to explain an economic theory. And the people who are asking us to explain an economic theory are people who don't even understand the existing economic theory or the one that is applicable to our economy at the moment. So usually in law we say, if you are going to carry out an examination in chief for your, or interviewing your witness in court, you must not ask questions that you don't even understand the answers. And I've seen many of our friends, both in the newspapers, media, social media, WhatsApp groups, people engaging in a conversation that they don't even know the answer. The only thing is to mock the bottom-up economic model without really explaining even to Kenyans first, what is this? What does exist at the moment? What do they follow? And I'm glad you started from where we are, which is the trickle-down economic model. The trickle-down economic model, for you to understand the bottom-up economic model, you have to first understand what is trickle-down. And bottom-up is an antithesis of the trickle-down economic model. Trickle-down means basically investing more on the big corporations, big companies, making sure that they are deregulated. They are less legal framework that holds them into account. If you remember the 2007-2008 financial crisis in the US, it was after that crisis, remember President Obama he was just elected immediately thereafter. And one of his greatest focus was the greater regulation of the financial sector, greater regulation of the bigger corporations, because the world for far too long has been told that if you want to ensure that the economy grows, and for the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid to benefit, you first make sure that the bigger corporations are deregulated, and therefore they operate without stringent rules or stringent, closer oversight of government. Number two is that you put those big companies, you ensure that they don't pay a lot of taxes. So you give them tax breaks. So that you get this conversation that corporate taxes should be reduced. You will also hear that if you want those companies to succeed, you make sure that you give them benefits of accessing capital. So the biggest corporations, because of the credit rating process, where if a company is B to being rated as A, in the capital markets, and in the international rating standards for financial institutions, those companies access credit at almost 0% interest rate. And therefore, they have a greater benefit of more capital to expand their business. Now, the assumption is that if you do all these things, whether it's a developed country or a developing country like ours, these companies, bigger multinational corporations, will do good business, they will employ more people, they will be able to pay more taxes, and the economy will grow. But over time, this has become a myth. Okay, it has become clear that if you give tax breaks to most of these companies and multinational companies, there is no guarantee that there will be a trickle down through dividends or other benefits to people who are earning lesser money. So the argument is that we need to do the reverse. That is, reverse of the trickle down is the bottom up. Instead of giving tax breaks to bigger corporations, take those tax breaks to smaller and medium-sized enterprises at the local level, whether it is small and cottage industries at the local level, whether you are going to do, for example, in our country, you have many cooperatives. If it's a milk plan in a particular county, like in my place, we have a cooperative called Leland Cooperative for Milk, or in Olkalau, a cooperative there, or even these smaller cottage industries, like the ones Governor Kibwana has set up in Mukhui for processing tomatoes and other fruits. You assist them by making sure that the tax breaks are there. Number two, you realize that in the process of deregulating the bigger corporations, we have overregulated the smaller ones. Now, if you saw on social media, there was a big trending message from someone who was saying I don't remember what they were marketing from, like Kipia. And they're saying you pay faster county tax, you have a levy, you have a certificate that you must get to start business, and so forth. One of the things now we want to do, and this is the bottom-up approach, instead of transferring that deregulation to the bigger corporations, deregulate the market for those who are entering. Make sure that all these certificates that are required are removed, so that then these companies can start very easily. They can easily ensure that the businesses can be commenced without too many bureaucracies. The third thing is that access to capital. Because these companies, smaller entities, the hustlers at the local level, border people, if you talk about small and cottage industries, agro-businesses, they don't have security. One of the things that is in the market, in the financial sector, to go to a normal bank, you'll be told that you must have security. And because they don't have that security, you must make sure that there is a financial mechanism at the local level. I have had my colleagues talking about, I had, for example, Honorable Sakaja is preaching in pulpit, lying in pulpit. He should lie in a political rally that, the bottom-up approach, the bottom-up approach means that everybody will be given 100,000. I have had another, when I was entering here, where Tangula's voice was on radio, that we are promising to give everybody cash. That's not the truth. Okay. The truth is that we want to have a financial model at the local level, either through table banking, for example, ensure that those table bankings that are aiding hustlers at the moment are properly structured and accommodated in our legal framework to ensure that people access capital. Our SACCOs are given proper recognition and lesser regulation, because some of the SACCOs at the moment operate purely like a bank. They must go back where SACCO started so that they can aid the local people at the local level. But more than that, the Hasla government is promising that you set up a fund in the model of CDF that is accessible to startups, up to 100 million in every constituency. That money is not free.
Okay, Senator.
That money is not going to be free. So when people talk about free money, tell us, are bigger corporations getting free money from banks? No. We are saying we are going to have a fairly properly structured financial allocation to these hustlers. First of all, supported by government from the beginning, but these money are repayable. They are repayable back to government.
Okay.
Then these startups can begin to grow. The argument here,
Senator,
let me close with that argument. The argument here is that instead of trusting and believing in the trickle-down approach that you assist the corporations, bigger corporations and bigger companies to grow so that the economy grows, we take the interventions directly at the bottom, so that then through that we have more people who are going to contribute to the economy. There are more people who bake the cake, and therefore more people to pay taxes that are going to assist our country grow.
Absolutely.
And so that I don't lose the last sentence. So
Okay,
that I'll
here
take
we
the
go.
questions.
Another last.
The last one.
Okay.
The last one.
Mheshimiwa,
If you look
Another
at
last.
in two last ones.
a politician must have three last. Of course.
Yeah,
This is the last one.
We'll give you one more.
The last one. Even in a rally, you tell people, you're mwisho. The last issue is that in the legal framework, what we are saying, that a stringent legal framework, I want to give you a good example of the intellectual property sector, because I was a founding director of the Anti-Counterfeit Agency. At the moment, you must have heard recently that 2 years ago that there was a huge crackdown in this country against the counterfeits. Counterfeits is basically goods that are violating intellectual property rights of another company. But the problem with this country is that we are using anti-counterfeit laws to protect big corporations that don't even need that protection in the first place. We have huge Chinese companies that are already producing maybe batteries, they're producing radios, they're producing all that. Their own companies in their own country have been allowed to produce imitations that are sold both in China and in our country. What do we do here? We go to Kipchumba, we go to Marikiti market and all these other markets. We raid these small businesses and business entities that have imported these things, destroy their goods or lock them somewhere in the name of counterfeits. Yet the corporations, the big multinationals we are trying to protect, are not even registered. They have not even registered the intellectual property rights with the Kenya Industrial Property Institute in the country.
Okay.
So the thing is that this mentality of fighting hustlers, fighting hawkers, fighting mamambokas, fighting mkokoteni, fighting traders in Kikomba must come to an end. And we are saying they must be part and parcel of the conversation. They are coming to the table to be part and parcel of growing our economy.
Okay.
Those who are making fun of bottom-up approach should first discuss the economic model.
I think there are many examples that you can give. And one thing that you are actually absolutely right about is that this is not a new model.
Correct.
It is not something that you've come up with or invented. It's been practiced in other countries and continues to be practiced. You're talking about government making the environment conducive to build, to grow business and to grow an economic environment. That is what government is supposed to do anyway.
Correct.
And you have very spirited examples of why and how this should work. So, I mean, you've joined a lot of Kenyans who've been crying for this for the longest time.
Correct.
My question is this something that has just been realized recently? If not, why has it not been enacted previously?
Okay, that's a good question. First of all, I'll start by saying that the bits and pieces of bottom-up approach economic model are existing in various sectors of our economy and other countries in the world. But as a policy, as a comprehensive policy that is informing our economic growth, this will be the first time, and this is the first time in this country that we're having a conversation that we will flip an economic model completely to ensure that the lead guide for the economic growth will be a bottom-up approach. Number two is that this has been understood through experience that we've gone through. For the last 60 years, a country grows from one step to another. Every administration led by a president has particular aspirations that they want to achieve. The Jubilee administration focused on big capital investments, okay? The roads, the port, and also enablers for this economic growth. And some of them are the electricity access. If you don't have energy at the local level, you will not be able to deal with the cottage industries. Yep. So already the infrastructure is in place for purpose of achieving this economic model. What we are saying is that we want to shift from now what we've been doing because of the experience we've achieved. For example, we are saying, instead of continuing to build infrastructure at the capacity of 80 billion investment, like the one for this overpass that is happening in Mombasa Road, we remove this money of 80 billion, at least take this 80 billion to more access roads at the rural level so that people can be able to get their goods to the market or to the cottage industries that are going to be established at local level. Okay. Instead of, there will still be need. There will still be need for similar roads in Nakuru, in Eldoret, in Mombasa, in Kisumu, and other bigger growing areas in Nyeri and so forth. But we are saying, instead of giving the people of Nyeri, for now, an 8 billion road, our plan is that we will go bottom. We will make sure that we take these resources, go and open up access roads for them at the local level to take their goods to the market.
So are you saying that the government that you all have been a part of, you all have been a part of this government, are you saying that previously, up until now, you have made mistakes?
Definitely. If you say you've not made mistakes, then as the Bible says, you are a liar. If you've not made mistakes, then there is no reason why we have another government coming to correct the mistakes.
And is there a reason why you should be given another opportunity to do this?
Absolutely, there is a reason. First of all, the first reason why we should be given this opportunity to do that is that we have the necessary experience. Number two, I am not the presidential candidate. Okay, William Ruto is going to be a presidential candidate for the first time in his entire life. He's going to be a presidential candidate who will be in the ballot for purpose of governing this country for the first time. The policies they have been able to implement with the president, in particular the first 5 years of Jubilee administration, because basically he's not been anywhere in this second term. Those first 5 years, many of them are enablers of this bottom-up approach. As I said, if you talk about electricity, some of the infrastructure that have been put in place, the TTIs, which has been a pet subject of the deputy president since he was a minister of education, what was it called, higher education, are part of the enablers, because if you want to grow the economy at the local level, you must have technicians. And these technicians are trained through the TTIs. If you want to have these cottage industries we are talking about, you must have the roads so that people can transport their goods and so forth. So there are many good things we did in the first 5 years of Jubilee administration that will enable us to focus on the bottom-up approach of the economic model. Your question can even be expanded more. Why should Kenyans trust William Ruto to do something different from Uhuru Kenyatta?
From what he
has not done in the last 10 years.
Let me tell you, the first is that he's the best candidate among all the others who have been in government.
I think that could be subjective.
No, of course.
Because you clearly
exactly. I am biased. Yes, but in my biased position, Raila Odinga has ran government, Kalonzo Musyoka has lived in government, Musalia Mudavadi has made a mistake in government, including Goldenberg, Wetangula has been in government since 1992, and so forth. All these people who are running, who are his competitors first, have worse experiences in government. But they've never been, except Raila Odinga, who has been part and parcel of running government as a leader of government. The others may not have been presidents. Number two is that we already know that one president, a vice president, can even do better than the president he was deputizing. When Mwai Kibaki was the vice president of Moi, for 10 years, people thought, and he was the vice president at the worst time of Kanu, when people were in torture chambers, people were taken to, all these other people were detained and so forth. But he wasn't the president. After those 10 years, after he went to opposition, when Mwai Kibaki came back to office in 2002, we remember Mwai Kibaki not as vice president, We remember him as the president who transformed our economy. So the point is that you can't judge a vice president. You know, on one hand, you are saying the vice president must be, the deputy president must be totally loyal to the president and must do everything that the president says. On the other side, you are saying he must take, he must be punished for the things. Can you tell me do?
Yes.
Can you blame William Ruto for what happened for the last 4 years, for example?
Because he was part of the administration.
He is not part of this administration. He is there de facto, but the jure, but de facto, he's not in office.
Was he not
the real
comfortable
deputy
in that
president
position?
the real deputy president at the moment is Raila Odinga.
I must ask you,
Yeah.
Murkomen, was he
You know,
comfortable in this de facto situation?
is one thing.
Was he comfortable in this de facto position?
But let's not
He's
even
not
focus so much.
Is he comfortable? I
Let's
don't
not
think
even
so.
focus so much on the suitability of William Ruto to vie for presidency. Let's just go back into what William Ruto is now selling.
Correct.
In this thing that you're calling the bottom up,
up.
right?
No,
and the way you've
Eric,
explained it,
I don't want you, let me just cut you a little bit. I don't want you to say this thing. You see, Eric, if you do so, let me say, if you do so, you fall into the trap of those politicians who are actually trying to bastardize a very important debate, changing it to, people's body parts or changing it into drinking discussion.
For lack of clarity, we end up there.
Let me just say, you are here. You are the ones who are informing Kenyans.
Let's call it the model that you're calling the bottom-up economic model.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And the way you've explained it is empowering people at the grassroots level.
Yeah.
Empowering
Building
small
our
businesses,
economy
building our economy from
the
bottom
grassroots.
up. We have had these things before, Mheshimiwa.
Yes.
If we look back into days of, for example, looking at how to promote agriculture in this country, we had all these institutions.
Correct.
We had KFA, which was looking at how to access market.
Exactly.
KGGCU, Kenya Planters Union, looking at how to bring cooperatives and empower them, right?
Yes.
In terms of accessing finance, what was it? Agricultural Finance Corporation, right?
FC, still there.
Which was supposed to make sure that farmers can get access, easy access to financing. And not just farmers, but people who are working in the agricultural value chain.
Yes.
Taking innovation.
So how come those things have been there? If we look at now how to empower people who are coming out and they want to start small businesses, Youth Enterprise Development Fund, Uwezo Fund, which was started by Ruto, and others have been there. So what is it that's going to be different from all those things that we've seen coming in, being abused, and then this one that we're now calling the bottom-up approach, which we are saying, let us stop giving a lot of focus to the big corporations and let us go and bring this focus to the small corporations. This conversation is not new.
What I find even interesting, Eric, is that this conversation, I have not heard a single word uttered about reviving institutions that did precisely what they're claiming they want to do. For instance, you talk about SACCOs, the growth of the cooperative movement that even led to the creation of a bank.
Correct.
You're talking about industry. I don't hear of any revival of Kenya industrial estates because it took care of what we're saying. People come out from TVETs, people come out with ideas that they want to innovate. These aren't just banks. These are people who understood and who would walk with you. One doesn't hear of that discussion.
Kariobangi Light Industries was one such place where helped.
Charles and Eric, I really want to thank you because you are now true believers of the bottom-up approach. And I am glad that you're giving these examples because this 30 minutes is not going to give us the opportunity to discuss everything that is in this bottom-up approach. You've given the right example. If you look at how Equity Bank and Family Bank grew, they grew from, SACCOs, from a low level to building society. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Building society for the case of Equity Bank, up to where they are at the moment, bottom up. Who is advising the Deputy President on bottom-up approach? One of the persons who enabled Equity and Family Banks to grow. If Governor Ndungu was not a governor of the central bank and working with a very progressive president called Mwai Kibaki, maybe banks like Equity and Family Bank would not have grown. But because these are people who are willing to grow this economy from below up, and now they are working with us in advisory level. These are some of the things we are working on. If you look at KFA, AFC, all these financial institutions, for sure, you have touched where it matters most. These institutions are still existing. For example, Agricultural Finance Corporation is still there, but the amount of money that has been given by the state for them to lend to the farmers is very little.
But they've been on their deathbed for a long time.
Yes, but at least they are still alive
on paper.
What we need to do when we come to office these are some of the institutions. When we talk about giving money to the local level, these are institutions that are going to be given the resources to be able to distribute to the farmers for the agriculture sector to grow. So you are right in terms of saying you've not had this and all this, but once the manifesto comes out, we were just the only question we were discussing. Exactly. Once the manifesto comes out, you will have detailed programs on the agriculture sector. You know what will happen to the livestock sector, for example. What's bottom up in the livestock sector? How are you going to add value to the abattoirs that are there and add value to the livestock that we have in this country? How do you add value to the agriculture? We have a very voluminous, for example, a document that was that have been developed by experts on the agriculture sector. We have voluminous documents that are been developed on light industries. What are some of the taxes we need to remove? What are some of the levies we need to remove? What are some of the resources we need to give to these startups? That's why when we talk about providing another fund of 100 million per constituency as a startup fund, as an enabler, as an incubator for the economy to grow from the bottom level, that's what we are calling bottom-up approach.
You know, we want to interrogate these things before a point of saying that we are launching a manifesto.
Correct.
Somewhere in June 2022.
Correct.
With 2 months to an election.
Yes.
You know why?
Yeah.
Because of our experience.
Correct.
We have seen manifesto being launched.
Beautiful manifesto.
Just the other day.
In
fact, I'm going to go to a break with this clip of one of the things that was being said during the launch of the Jubilee Manifesto in 2017.
Okay.
And then we come back and we say, if we wait for manifesto, my friend, when shall we interrogate what we are being promised? It's 28 minutes to 9 o'clock. Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room is Eric Latif, CT Muga Nduoko, and Elgeyo Marakwet Senator Kipchumba Murkomen. What is the bottom-up economic model that is being spearheaded by what they're calling the hustler movement, the hustler nation? Okay, so listen to this. This is one of the things that were promised in the last manifesto.
Wengi wenu mnaweza kuoperate mambo ya internet. Si kweli ama si kweli? Sinaona hiyo? Ile mnahitaji ni bundles. Alafu mnaendesha mambo yenu mbele. Na tumesema ya kwamba hiyo bundles haitakuwa shida kwa sababu tutahakikisha kwamba kuna free internet in every ward.
By working from the bottom down. Yeah, from up to from top to bottom.
That is the attempt at explaining the bottom-up approach by Alice Wahome, the Kandara MP. Senator Kipchumba Murkomen is in the studio this morning, and he's also now giving us an explanation of the bottom-up approach. You know, Senator, the way you've explained it, this bottom-up economic model, like Ndu even said, is not new. It's been practiced, it's been tried. One of the foremost campaigners for the bottom-up approach is Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who was the UN Secretary General's advisor on Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals at present. He has been working with something called the Millennium Villages, where he says, empower the village and then you will get economic development happening. Now, it appears that what you guys have done is you've gone and copied what's happening globally. You've basically are riding the global bandwagon, and you've brought it and you have said bottom-up economic model. What we are trying to understand from you is how we contextualize that bottom-up economic model to the Kenyan case with specific examples of this is how we are going to do it. So, for example, when you tell us that you're going to make sure that you empower the wheelbarrow, the boda, the mamamboga. Tell us exactly how. What exactly are you saying that you're going to do that's going to be different from what has been done before?
First of all, I heard you, and I want to repeat this. Play the clip by Honorable Wahome. I just want to say this, that first of all, you can't just pick a very small section of one's conversation like we're having here. If someone stutters for us a few minutes, you say, okay, that is all he understands about the bottom-up approach.
Of course
but by
no means.
No, I'm just saying.
We have a lot of respect for Alice Wahome. She's your learned senior. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So, of course, she understands a lot more. But then, if she's not able to clearly articulate or she understands,
Yeah.
then there's an issue.
No,
No, but
just
Eric, I
saying-
think that is actually Mheshimiwa's point.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound to me like she doesn't understand. It sounds
Correct.
to me like she was trying to clear her head. You know
Yeah,
how you think
correct.
your way, but
Yeah,
she was
very many
talking.
things.
She was
Correct.
talking her way into her thinking.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
That's true. So I'm just saying, in that very small period of time, you
Yes.
can make a judgment for an intelligent woman like Alice Waume as a conclusion of what she is. And two, we are very happy in the Hustler movement that the conversation has changed. From tribe, this coming together with tribe, this other one from this tribal chief making a coalition with this other one, to a conversation about our economy. And this is a good thing. This is already a contribution we are making in our political conversation in the country. And when we promised, and the Deputy President promised a few years ago, that the conversation will change, this is what we meant. That our conversation will shift from which alliance and the other one, and which politician is coming with the other, to the question of interrogating economic models. I want you, Eric, and I want to challenge also those who are challenging us, to also discuss the economic model. Their trickle-down approach, they should come and sit down here and tell us how a model that we've applied for the last 50, almost 60 years since independence, which has not worked, how are they going to make it work? We have said we've tried that model. We have bits and pieces of of bottom-up approach inside our economic implementation for the last 60 years. We are saying we now need to flip it. We are not saying that the bigger corporation should be done away with. We're not saying that they should be punished. We're just saying that they should pay their they make their share of contribution, if it is taxes, equal share like the person who is at the bottom, so that then they are not getting tax breaks at the expense of the person at the bottom. We are saying that if we are talking about capital-intensive investment, this capital-intensive investment should be reduced so that then the other investments can be done across the country. For example, I've given you an example of the 80 major roads. But I'll give you an example also of the Ruiru bullet factory. Why does Kenya need a bullet factory of 4 billion? And at such a time of serious economic crisis.
How much do you spend on bullets in our budget?
Well, it is already, when we want to ask that question, they tell us a secret. We already have.
But is it only for us, or is it something that we can also export?
The point is that already the bullets we have in Eldoret, the factory that we have, a bullet factory in Eldoret, I think is enough for us. Our focus should be to take that 4 billion. Or if you have to invest to expand that bullet factory, give it 1 billion. Take the 3 billion and go and invest in the local economy. So the question you've asked is that we are doing that which has been done before in other parts of the country. If it has been done before and it's working in other countries,
in other parts of the world, yes.
in other parts of the world, and it's making those countries do better. Yes. It's just about us to contextualize in our local level. The same way Americans are doing at the moment. The Biden administration is trying to move the country from Reaganomics, which is the trickle-down economics of President Reagan, properly popularized by President Reagan, to now a bottom-up approach where
Kipchumba,
investments are going to be put at local level. That is what we all want to do.
You know the one thing that I'm not hearing, and I think even CT said the same, is the how, is the specifics. So, for example, when we say let's remove money from mega projects and take them to the bottom, let's remove money from guns factory and take it to the bottom.
Correct.
How?
I told you, number one, make capital available. Create a fund in every constituency. Put in place 100 million shillings for every constituency to be accessed by hustlers at the local level. You asked me about border sector.
Yes.
Organize them in terms of circles. Put resources inside that. Let them reinvest those resources either in buildings or in other investments at the local level, which can give them resources, or even in establishing the cottage industries we are talking about. You asked me about, I'll give you the example of hawkers. Organize hawkers. Don't criminalize hustlers. Hawkers they are not. They are organized. I'm saying recognize hawkers in a legal framework and give them the opportunity and places they are going to run their trade within our urban areas without chasing them around.
So what are we saying? Are we saying building markets, or what are we saying? Specifically, now let's talk about hawkers. So we have hawkers in Nairobi.
Yes, exactly.
Are we saying that we build a hawkers market?
Provide, you don't even need to.
Or are
to
we
build
saying
hawkers
that we
market.
allow hawkers to operate willy-nilly? What are we saying?
No, you go for the specific. You can say, for example, make sure that they are in a circle. Then they can access capital. 2, make sure that certain streets, like other parts of the world, you say Koinange Street on Tuesday, where they will be hawking there. Moy Avenue will be on Sundays. Like the way they block certain streets in major capitals in the world for people to come and sell their trade there. Make them feel. Stop the idea that
this conversation.
Yeah.
The Kibaki administration had this conversation.
Correct.
The Jubilee Alliance had this conversation.
Yeah.
The Jubilee Party had this conversation.
But they didn't have hustlers on the table.
Are all these people not
we are saying they
talking
didn't
about
have
hustlers?
they didn't have hustlers
Because
on the
I'm
table.
talking about just the issue of the hawkers.
Yeah.
And saying let's establish hawkers markets.
Yes.
Mwai Kibaki said let's establish hawkers markets.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And we started building one in Westlands,
Yes.
which to date is still being built.
I'll tell
we
you what
talked
the
about
problem
building
is.
others. Mwai Kibaki's government talked about let's create, in fact, Koinange Street in Nairobi
Correct.
on Sundays was going to be a hawkers market.
Yeah.
There was a whole lot of pushback.
Yeah.
Jubilee coalition, when it was coming up, URP, TNA and the others, when they were campaigning, it was the same thing. Hawkers, let's recognize them. Jubilee administration of the party, same conversation. I'm just wondering, these stories we keep hearing, now you're just branding it and calling it bottom up. But if we have not seen any willingness by the same principles to move it forward, how do we expect it to be different?
This is the difference. In all those administrations, the hawkers were not on the table. We are promising 2 things. Bottom-up approach in terms of bottom-up approach economic model, but also bottom-up approach in terms of governance. We are saying that decision-making is no longer going to be from the big men coming down. It's not going to be elite-based. We are going to ensure that every decision we make is informed by the stakeholders from bottom up. So it's not just bottom-up economics, but it's also bottom-up governance structure. So that then, when the things you are talking about are things that have been, the answers I'm giving you are answers that have come from hawkers themselves. And because we are a bottom-up, you see, Eric, the administrations you're talking about were taking a bottom-up economic model programs and projects and superimposing them on an already existing structure of trickle down. And a structure of trickle down is elite captured. It is cartel captured. The reason why laws and regulations are always being passed to benefit the bigger corporations is because the trickle down approach is already not just presupposes, but as out of from a point of fact is being led by big corporations that are controlling the governance structure. We're saying we move the governance also from decision making coming from the hustlers themselves to being implemented by a hustler friendly government. That's why we are so different from all the others. The others cannot even dare. All these other, if you see these Mudavadis, Raila Odinga, Kalonzo, why they are so scared about bottom-up approach is because they cannot dare their sponsors. Their sponsors are telling them we must continue the old models of putting money to big corporations. We are disrupting the discussion.
All right.
We are disrupting the economic model that is existing, the status quo, and saying, ladies and gentlemen, it is time the hustlers come to the table of conversation.
How is that happening today? And I'm going to give you context for this question. If somebody were to present themselves in a particular position, one of the first questions that they're often asked is, show me your
credentials.
No, not even. Show me your lived experience. Show
Your resume.
me your resume. Show me what it is that you've done in the past. Show me your track record.
Correct.
In this very thing that you say you want to do, where have we seen it happen? Of the principles of the hustlers that you say are on the table, where has this been done for Kenyans to see, actually, you know what? This has been happening in this area. This has been happening in this area. It is clear that it can work. And so we want to give these individuals an opportunity to come and be able to do that. Where has it happened? And if it has not, why?
Charles
and then
has
how
already-
can we be guaranteed that it will then happen coming into government with the promises that we've seen being made in the past over and over and over again and have never come to fruition.
Charles has already given some of the examples that in the past, and I'm sure you're not asking about the hawkers, you're asking about the model itself, where it has been happening.
Even the hawkers that you
I'm
said
saying
about the table, where have they
across.
been involved?
You're talking
Where
about
have they been
across,
involved
exactly.
in decision making, for example.
In the 80s, there was an experiment attempted by Moi's government called District Focus for Rural Development, which brought together, leaders at the district level and agree on development. But its only demerit, so its weakness at that point in time, was that it was the leaders only who were coming to the district headquarters to decide decisions and development for the district. We also, and Charles has given good examples, when KFA was running, AFC was properly funded. The agriculture sector was growing, and you had proper regulation on the tea sector, coffee sector. Those sectors of the economy, the agriculture sector of our economy was really contributing and operating competitively globally. Why? Because decisions were being made by the farmers themselves. Those the farmers. That's why it's called Kenya Farmers Association, because the farmers themselves were in governance. The problem we have at the moment is that it is over time, because of this trickle-down economics, corporations and big money makers and cartels took over the farmer sector. How did they take it? Because they were the suppliers of the fertilizer. Fertilizer at that time was imported by KFA themselves and distributed by KFA to the farmers. But once it became a ministry responsibility, the cartels then came and lived in the ministry and ensured that the cost of fertilizer is high. What did William Ruto do in 2008 when he became a Minister of Agriculture? He was able to push away these cartels to a level where the prices of fertilizer came down from 6,000 to 1,800, which was being accessed by the farmer. What has the Jubilee administration done? They maintained that price for some time, but in the second term, the president unilaterally decided that subsidies for farmers was going to be removed. Despite the fact that all over the world, and especially in developed countries, subsidies for all farmers is a very important component of economic growth and protecting the local farmer. He unilaterally decided that the government was not going to control the prices of maize, that we were going to buy maize, and that NCBB was going to operate using market forces. That doesn't happen in other countries in the world. In other countries in the world, the economy is, the agriculture sector is protected by the government itself because it has both oversight responsibility, but also a protection responsibility for these farmers. So those are some of the retrogressive things that the second term of President Uhuru Kenyatta has done, being assisted by Raila Odinga and co. When we were there, and if you go to the records in the Senate, in everywhere, in the second term from 2018 to 2019, one of the things I disagreed vehemently with this administration was the reversal of these subsidies for farmers. Because if we in the Hustler Nation are saying we will not only return the subsidies for the farmers, but we will make it even better for them by ensuring that you return the subsidy, but return also the AFC loans at a more accessible terms, lesser than the 10% that is now given by the AFC itself, make the resources more, make agribusiness better, introduce new crops. If it is fruit crops or cash crops and new crops like we've been discussing for avocados for a long period of time and other fruits that if you introduce at the moment, the farmers are going to benefit. Add value to the livestock. Make sure that introduce new breeds. The thing is, if we only decide and do, these things...
Were they stopped? Because you can say you had a conversation about
these
them,
things were,
but were they stopped?
They were not stopped because
this is my question.
The man on the top, is a trickle-down man. Now we are saying a bottom-up person should be on the top. President Harry Truman used to say, and he had a plaque on his table that says, the buck stops here.
Yeah.
The buck stops at the presidency. Because eventually, all these cabinet secretaries, policy makers, decision makers, we have a president at the moment that doesn't even hold a cabinet meeting. The last time he had a cabinet meeting could have been last year, We do not have accountable governance structure in the country. We are saying we want to return, we now want to elect a hustler's president whose decision making will be bottom up. His accountability structure, he has told Kenyans, I'm selling to you my track record as a Minister of Higher Education, I did the following things to ensure that we move education fast from focus on just university education and degrees for the sake of it to skills-based. And these skills are going to be useful in running our economy. People who are plumbers, people who are going to be technicians, engineers.
I don't recall that.
Because you need to jog your memory. Because the person who marketed and established and ensured that TTIs are established in this country and built at a very low cost amount is William Ruto. That one you cannot take away from him.
So he pushed for the revamping of TVETs.
Of TVETs and ensure that the cost, usually TVETs used to be built using 200 million, 300 million. All the TVETs in the country have been built using 50 million shillings because they ensure they centralize the architectural work, the designs, and all the model that is used in all the constituencies across the country. And we have now almost 200 technical institutions across the country offering different courses and well equipped with machines. And we believe that foundation that he laid then is now going to be the foundation that we are going to use for bottom-up approach. His work in the Ministry of Agriculture, focusing on the farmer, making sure that subsidies are lowered, is going to be some of the few examples we can say directly, this is his contribution. Even in the first term of Jubilee administration.
All these things that we've talked about. So I don't remember, for example, Agriculture Minister William Ruto talking about reviving KFA, revamping AFC, reviving farmers' cooperatives and such. I don't remember.
Remember, you are forgetting that even though he was the Minister of Agriculture, there was also Minister of Cooperatives. So somebody else was in charge of cooperatives who did a fantastic job. My friend Njeru Ndwiga.
Yes.
He was a fantastic Minister of Cooperatives.
On the cooperatives front now.
And cooperatives were performing dismally before 2002. When President Mike came to office, Njeru Ndwiga became the first minister of cooperatives under Mike Kibaki, and he did a fantastic job.
I remember conversations with Njeru Ndwiga.
Correct.
I'm now. How about William Ruto, Agriculture Finance Corporation, getting more budgetary allocation so that they can lend more people?
Remember, my brother Eric. Even though you are Minister of Agriculture, the overall decision of putting more money in AFC is going to be the decision of the Minister of Finance and the Cabinet. But give credit to President Mike Kibaki. His government revived the AFC. AFC was gone. It is under his administration that AFC was revived.
I don't want to talk about Mwai Kibaki. I want to talk about the hustler narrative.
Correct.
And I want to talk about the bottom-up approach. Everything you've said, from the perspective of giving us an overview of what you want to do, I actually understand. But what I'm still failing to understand is when you talk about, say, 10 million, 100 million shillings being given to every constituency, the structure within which this money will operate, so that you can tell me that, one, we have this agricultural setup in most of these countries, but it's not the product that we are talking about. We're talking about the value addition.
Correct.
And we're talking about the direction the value addition will go to, so that when you're talking of the money, it is clear that the farmer will get the money for a certain product that they, and we know how this will go up that chain. I don't hear it. I also don't hear something which is similar to what we saw AGOA doing. You see, what AGOA did, AGOA didn't say, here is 10 billion US dollars or Kenyan shillings to Kenya. They said, no. It's opportunities. Set up this, there is a market. Meaning, whatever you produced, you are guaranteed you would be paid. Now, that is a bottom-up approach, if you ask me.
And there are many.
Charles,
respond to this after the news. And we are seeing very many comments as well on social media. Senator, will you stay behind for another hour so you can respond to this?
I can stay for
very many comments on social media, and also we'll open up the question. Senator Kipchumba Murkomen talking about the bottom-up economic model. What questions, after listening to his explanation of bottom-up, what questions do you get in your mind? You are free to ask him. Very many of them are coming as well on social media: SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. For example, somebody saying, ask the senator if they'll still support devolution Bottom up has been tried elsewhere, for example, Zimbabwe, Central African Republic, Somalia, Haiti, and all those have not seemed to be working. Very many of these questions we'll be asking you in the next hour as well, Senator, so that we can respond and hear people's questions and hear people's concerns. Somebody also talking about the markets that were built by President Mwai Kibaki. This is the hawkers markets in Mudurwa, Toi, Nyayo. Have they been supported by the Jubilee administration? Yes or no? It continues into the final hour of the show. And we still have with us Senator Kipchumba Murkomen speaking about the bottom-up approach. But before we begin the conversation, today's proverb city.
The chief's wealth is his people.
The chief's wealth is his people. That's bottom up. It's the people.
You know, everything that I've heard Mheshimiwa speak about, Mheshimiwa has actually, it's like he's not just copy. This is cut and paste, public participation, right? And throw it into everything that you can possibly think of. That, I think, is an ideal situation that I would really love to see. However, in the absence of structures and perhaps a rethinking of what we have and how best what they're proposing would work, let me give the example of why I'm saying what I'm saying. All these areas of the country that are peopled by our subsistence farmers, is this the best use we can put that land to? Why do I ask this question? It isn't spoken of a great deal, but there's something President Moi did, the late former President Moi did, that is paying heavy dividends for the country. Moi opened up the education sector like nobody else has, or probably will, because we are building on the building blocks that President Moi created. Now, an inadvertent thing that happened with the harshness of that particular regime is many people left the country. Right now, remittances are just about our biggest foreign exchange earner. So when you talk about human resource, we see that human resource being what it actually is. Now, I'm asking the land resource that we have, because this is something that our citizens have, given that probably 80% of our population is in the rural areas and they're involved in some subsistence farming. This trickle-down effect, the bottom-up approach that we have, how is it going to add value to these activities that these citizens have? Because they form the bulk of our population anyway. And what is it that you are going to do to this urban population who are predominantly youth that you say, what is the structure that you are going to put in place to ensure that all these ideas that you keep talking about actually produce value? Not just for the sake of, we've said it. What is it, this structure, and how is it going to work?
Thank you very much. First of all, so that I don't look like I don't answer questions, there was a question Eric had asked about, I think that we made promises about internet cafes and so forth. Yes, we didn't achieve to the ward level, but at least many constituencies were able to put in place at least one, and in others more than one, in 2 or 3 other wards. Initially, we started with counties, it moved to constituencies. Maybe the best way is to ensure that internet, which unfortunately recently was taxed, is more accessible to as many people as possible through their mobile phones, because we are one of the countries that has a better mobile access. If you've traveled, even in more developed countries, you don't have the kind of access we have in this country. We can make it better by working with the private sector to ensure that the cost and the cost of accessing internet is higher than just the cafes we were promising in every constituency. So a good idea can give way to a better idea. Even the ideas we're giving here, if Charles has a better idea, we will be able to incorporate that better idea. The other thing that Charles had raised was about AGOA. AGOA is an antithesis of what we are discussing about bottom-up. Why? Because AGOA largely exports jobs. You're talking about your sourcing of the material from another country, maybe Bangladesh and so forth. You're going to create an EPZ in Mombasa Road down there at the river. And then that EPZ in at the river, the people working there come from, I've already sourced materials from other countries, including the yarn. So what we are talking about is not the AGOA type of industrialization. AGOA is tokenism. At least I know it a little bit because I participated partly in some of its negotiation.
Then how
us.
did you get to negotiate these negative things if you're part of the
negotiation?
No,
I'm saying that time as an academician, I wasn't like a government official. And it was in my previous years before I became a senator.
So you sold us short?
No, not at all. And even when I was negotiating that time, it was not on behalf of Kenya. I was working for some farm in Washington D.C. So it's a different. At least I just wanted to let you know that I know what's happening in AGOA, and all these things about industrialization. And I want to come now to your question is. If we talk about agriculture, and we're talking about specifics of agriculture, first, make agriculture attractive to younger generation, who are the inheritors of the land and the wealth that their forefathers left to them. If you go to most parts of North Rift, there is a greater subdivision of land at the moment. One of the things that we've been preaching through county governments is that you want people to leave land consolidation, to allow the land to continue being consolidated. They can live in one area of the land and farm the other part of the land. But that will not be possible until you demonstrate that agriculture is productive. And it's productive in which way? Change the crops. If you go to a few of the counties, and including Uasin Gishu, Trans Nzoia, Uasin Gishu and Nandi, and partly Elgeyo Marakwet, there has been a message being preached by the county government, and it's really working in Uasin Gishu because they're giving the seeds to the farmers. They give new seeds for avocado, for macadamia to farmers, and they give them extension services. There is a gentleman who is, I think, a professor in matters agriculture, who has established an orchard in Uasin Gishu. And many people are coming to see, oh yeah, you don't have to do maize if you want to become rich. Sure. You can change to another crop, and this crop has a specification of what are the seeds. You have the information, what are the, where do you get the seeds, what fertilizer do you use, what manure should you use, and where is the market. Now, the next step in this bottom-up approach is to make sure that you do contracted farming. The farmer knows for sure that if I do of avocados or if I do maize, I know the buyer will be so and so. And you already have a template of where you are selling. Now, how best can you be able to improve this? Create cottage industries. Let these products be processed, even if it's not to its ultimate completion. You process to a certain level where it can become easy to export, or becomes, if you talk about coffee, for example, roasting itself, what we are doing in the Senate in the coffee bill, which we've just finished, is to ensure that you separate the person who is going to buy the coffee from the person who is going to store the coffee. Because then the people who used to store the coffee are the buyers, and they are the same marketers. Yeah. So you need to separate responsibilities so that ensure that these people can not create some kind of a cartel. There's a lot, and by the way, Charles, I'm lifting this from the document we have. I'm lifting from my mind, from the few things I've read. I'm not an expert in agriculture. I'm a lawyer. Yeah, I'm not an expert economist, but from the work we've done as a team, these are some of the things we are planning to do. And also for a person who is attempting, I am one of the people who is trying to attempt agriculture farming, exactly Senator, what I'm talking about.
The way in which you're saying this,
yeah,
it is so convincing,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And the things that you're bringing out would make sense.
Yes.
And they do make sense.
Yes.
Like we said, they've been practiced the world over.
Yeah.
They do make sense. Yeah. My issue is that the spiritedness with which you talk about this is the same spiritedness with which you propelled the Jubilee administration and everything that the administration said they were going to do. Now we are moving somewhere else with as much, if not more, enthusiasm than you previously had. And if we say that present situation or future is always held by historical practice, then the question for many people will be, if you get into that position where things are not quite working, are you going to jump ship again in terms of an ethos?
I think in the bottom-up approach, governance now, not the economic part, because it goes together. In the governance structure, if you are having a governance structure that involves those who are affected, the people you're working with, the farmers are on the table. If you look at, let me give you a small example from our political party constitution. The UDA, which I'm going to move to,
Oh, you've not done that yet.
Well, I have moved in
If
spirit,
you did that,
but
then by election.
in terms of paper, that is the ultimate where I'm going to be.
Right.
So there's some dishonesty happening. Okay, go on.
There is no dishonesty.
There is dishonesty.
I'm just like President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is promoting ODM, and
He's the
everybody
party
else.
leader of
Jubilee,
As
but
he
he's
refused.
promoting ODM, and he's trying to organize NASA to get a presidential candidate. So we are all in this conundrum. But de facto, I am a Jubilee member. I mean, de jure. De facto, I am in UDA. Now, the thing I'm trying to tell you is that even our party constitution tries to, it has established a governance structure that makes sure that Mama Mboga, hustlers, border people have a representation from the ward level to the national level in the political party structure. That is the kind of governance we want also to replicate when we come to office, to ensure that the difference between us and the current government is that decision making is going to be made by those who are affected by that decision from the bottom up. If you read, and again, our constitution supports this principle. If you read
But
Article
what
170,
structure are you going to have so
it?
that what you're saying actually works?
That's where I'm
Because-
coming.
Yes.
If you read Article 174 of the Constitution, you realize already devolution is about government to the people. So, bottom-up approach kind of mirrors the governance structure already put in place in terms of devolved system of government. And that's why we're talking about constituencies, that the resources will be sent to a governance structure that is already provided for the constitution, that's closer to the people, that's called our constituency.
But my question
In
is, and I
terms
hope
of
you're going to
how
go
do you
there.
how do you now make sure that this one works? You make sure that you bring. Do you know why every government comes with various laws passed by the cabinet? Is so that it can put into effect their manifesto. Once a manifesto is voted for by the people of Kenya, the cabinet, the first responsibility of the president and his cabinet is to go and sit down with the attorney general and the whole cabinet and say, now, which laws are we going to enact afresh?
Translate manifesto into action.
Into action through legal framework.
But my question is this, and I'm going to ask it again. How can Kenyans be guaranteed that if something goes wrong, you will not jump ship in terms of a belief,
Yeah.
and say, actually, you know what? This is maybe let's change it to something else. As opposed to what it would appear right now, that this approach seems very popular and we can use it to ride on the coattails of this political expediency to move forward. How can Kenyans be guaranteed that you will not change as you've already changed? How can we be sure that should you get in the next 5 years, something didn't go right and then you will change again?
We haven't changed. I want Kenyans to appreciate that the administration that is at the moment is led by President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Of which you're part of.
He has not changed. Okay, he's determined to complete this administration as it is. This administration also is not a complete failure. It is not. And I keep going back to the things we did in the first 5 years, which I am aware because I don't know what has been happening in the second term. I have been an outsider like many other people. But in the first term, the things we did are things that are tangible and accountable. The number of the roads we increased, from by almost 7,000 kilometers. And by just changing the model, by creating these low-volume seal roads, we are able to open as many parts of the country with a smaller, less thicker tarmac road, but at least accessible to the people, better than the maram that we used to have in place. You have electricity access to as many parts of the country. It is improved in this country. You have...
Which in turn has almost collapsed KPLC.
I don't think the problems of KPLC are beyond just electricity access, because if that was going to collapse, if there was an institution that should have collapsed, it's the KETRACO, which is involved in the distribution. KPLC is a beneficiary because it just collects manages the meters and collects the money that is paid by the people of Kenya. So the thing.
But how do you collapse when your job is to distribute something that exists and it exists in plenty?
That's why I'm saying the problems of Kenya Power is something else. it would have been over borrowing to do different things or to improve its systems, the problems of corruption and all those. I don't want to go there. Because we are focusing on how do you implement the bottom-up approach.
That's why I'm also not going there.
So, exactly. So the point we are trying to make here is that Jubilee administration was not a total failure. There are things that we are building on because the Jubilee administration put in place. Now, from there, we are saying another person is coming to office with a new
fresh
thinking. He is not promising a nyayo on everything. He's not saying nitafuata nyayo ya Uhuru. He's saying we are going to move now from this foundation that we have laid. We will flip the model upside down. We will focus on the people who are at the lower level of the pyramid and make sure that we grow the economy from there coming up, building on some bits and pieces of what was already existing from 1963, but also making sure that we start afresh in many other sectors that will ensure that the bottom-up approach is achieved.
But what Ndu is asking is basically saying, looking at your recent history, right, as the principles of this new movement, when you talk about, for example, that governance is going to be people-centered.
Yes.
Now, if we look at UDA, just UDA itself,
As a party, yes.
today, we are not seeing that people-centered governance in UDA.
I think I will just say
the chairman of UDA was not elected by the people. He's not a hustler. The leadership of UDA is not hustler led. The decision making at UDA, I've not seen how it has been different from UDA participating in a by-election and Jubilee participating in a by-election, or UDA today as a party and Jubilee as a party. I'm not seeing any difference where members of UDA can say, in Jubilee we were being told, but now because I've moved to UDA, I'm saying. I have not seen that. This is you as the history of the people. You're the same people who have been in power for the last X number of years. And if it's talking about empowering and ensuring that decision-making at the local level is given prominence, would have seen that with devolution. Would have seen a lot of support being given to devolution. This administration, from the first to the second administration of Jubilee, have basically just been holding back on advances on devolution.
It is
releasing of money to the counties in good time, allowing decision to take place in terms of public participation, allowing public participation to take place at the national level in decisions that are made by the national government. If the administration that you've been a part of has not been fully supporting public participation, how do you expect that the hustler governance model is never going to work?
And from people who have been in this very same government, who have done everything, if I may use your word, an antithesis to the devolution process.
And a final one, before you answer that, what are these things that the Deputy President, William Ruto, would have loved to do, but has been curtailed by His Excellency the President, with whom the buck stops? What are these things along this movement that you say, I would have been able to implement had it not been for? What are those?
First of all, Eric, you don't know UDA. If you knew UDA, you would appreciate that John Juguna Kawanjiko was elected the other day, who is a hustler, a person of very humble background from Kiambaa, against all odds, because UDA gave him a chance, and gave him a chance by having a fair process of picking candidates. You also don't know that there's a hustler called Mudama, who is the chair of UDA, Secretary General called Veronica Maina, and many other hustlers who are there who are volunteering. They are not even being paid. All these people are volunteering because this is a party that doesn't have resources, unlike its sister party, which actually has taken all the resources and chased away everybody else from the party. So I think you need to go to the definition of who is a hustler. I hope you don't believe that a hustler is a poor person. Or that all hustlers are poor. I've seen that conversation.
Tell us, who is a hustler?
So who's a hustler?
Hustler is a person who is making a living through hard work. Hard work. That's why we are calling our slogan is Kazi ni Kazi. It's a wheelbarrow. And I find it ridiculous. I saw my colleague Mutula Kilonzo was here the other day making fun about this wheelbarrow. How can you give people wheelbarrow? His party simple his party symbol is
an umbrella.
Is an umbrella. Is he distributing umbrellas in Makueni?
No, he's not.
He's not.
That's the difference between him and you.
Yeah, so these are the people who are having oranges as their party symbol. They're distributing oranges. And the other one distributing cuckoos. We are saying that our symbol...
Jubilee was promoting a handshake. And when a handshake happened, you bolted.
Our symbol is demonstration of resilience and hard work. There are people who say that the wheelbarrow is a 16th century tool. A 16th century tool that is found in both White House, that is found in State House, that is found in a village house, that is found in every part of this world. Why? Because it has the resilience. The mark of a hustler is resilience, is the capacity and ability to rise above all odds, against all odds, to the levels that he wants to rise in economically, academically, and in every way in life.
Thank you very much for the Kizungu.
Yes,
but
exactly.
I'm asking, people-centered governance in UDA.
At the moment, most of the people who are running UDA at the moment are volunteers. When the elections will take place, and I told you our constitution is very clear, the elections will start from a polling station, and it will have a clear representation of small traders, including border riders, mama bogas, and the constitution makes sure that that representation is all the way to the national level. The people you see now that have made UDA become an instant sensation across the country are because these are people who are in Jubilee and hustlers at heart. They were in Jubilee Party. They were disappointed that they were not being given an opportunity to participate in the party affairs of Jubilee. They are disappointed in the manner in which people were chased from Jubilee itself. And they said, this is our better option for us to grow this ideology that we've always had, that we must be able to create a nation where everyone will not be judged by their tribe, by their ethnicity, but by the content of their character.
Let's broaden the conversation. We promise that we're going to be picking calls in this hour. So let's start. Joel from Kericho, good morning. Joel?
Good morning.
Good morning, Joel.
Habari asubuhi.
Salama kabisa.
Salamia Senator Kipchumba Murkomen.
Yes, Joel, namesalimika.
Salama sana baba, nimeshukuru sana. Unajua vile unaeleza?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Vile unaeleza mheshimiwa?
Yes.
Ndio tunajua hapa chini. Bottom up economy hata sisi raia tumechukua huku chini. Na ningependa kutangazia wakati sisi wote tuko kwa UDA. Hiyo ndio jamaa tulienda, tulivugua Jubilee, hatukuambia yale maamuzi ambayo alikuwa anafanya na mheshimiwa rais. Yeye mwenyewe hapo kuhusisha wanachama. So sisi wote tuko kwa wheelbarrow. Kabisa 100%. Na nakwambia Eric.
So umeelewa hii bottom up yote?
Sana hata unajua nini, acha nikwambie Eric. Sisi kama hustlers hustler. Unajua hustler yule mmoja anatafuta. Unaona? So mimi mwenyewe ni hustler na Kericho tumeregister watu 10,000 na tunaendelea kuregister watu wa UDA. Na tuko UDA. Na tulifungua Jubilee.
Sawa Joel. Thank you. Paul in Mombasa, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning, Paul.
I'm good. I can see Mheshimiwa today. You could have called it a hot seat instead of a SpiceFM today.
It's always a hot seat.
Too hot. So I can see Mheshimiwa is trying to struggle explaining this thing. The bottom up, actually, which I don't know how bottom it is. He's really praising the first term. But the first term is where we had the Galana Kulalu, which was a great project. We don't know what happened with it. The first term is when we had a very good promise of the laptops, which everyone doesn't know where it went. And he himself, from his counties where we had this ambitious project of the dams, which actually those are the things they would be speaking to when they speak of the bottom up, because those would be the dam would have spurred a lot of economic growth in that region. So basically what they are trying to explain is just moving around words, but they don't give us the specifics. Let him just give us the specifics of what bottom up approach.
Okay.
Because when he talks about improving the roads in the rural areas, I think, would they be fighting or conflicting with the county? Because some of those feeder roads are supposed to be done by the county. So how are they going to do it with the county?
Okay, he'll respond to those ones. Yegon in Nandi, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Eric.
How are you? Are you in Nandi? Where are you, Yegon? You're always moving.
I'm in Wajir.
Okay.
Yeah. So my question to our fellow midfielder in the Asala nation is, what percentage or what are you going to do when it comes to allocation of default funds to the counties? The second question is, how are you going to do about the employment structure and system now that we have a lot of graduates suffering on the ground?
All right. Asante. Dr. Mike, good morning.
Hi, Latif. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Okay, I'm just disappointed. Because for the last 1 year, when this hustler narrative that again metamorphosed to a bottom-up approach came up, I've not heard anything about what actually ails our country, and that is corruption. You look at the whole contingent of all those guys who are propagating this bottom-up thing. They have been in this government all along. Does it mean that Mheshimiwa there has never done anything to do with this bottom-up in his constituency? Because, I would expect him to do, public participation. I would expect him, by the time he's doing that feeder road in his village, that person in the bottom told him this is what we need. So at the end of the day, I just find it like a personal vendetta between two people in that government. They want to bring it down, to bring their fight down here to us.
They want it to trickle
which
down
don't
to
matter
us.
to us. They want to trickle down their fights to us, and yet the whole lot in that place is just riddled with one thing: corruption. In fact, one of his lieutenants is answering to charges of 12 billion somewhere. In his constituency himself, we have another white elephant lying there. And you see, at the end of the day, let me tell you, Latif, these guys will just go in there, and again, if they decide to work on this model they're talking about, we just don't need to go far. Idi Amin decided to take money back to the pockets of Ugandans. We know what has happened to their shilling. In fact, the late this guy called this Zimbabwe guy, Robert Mugabe, brought about that thing of kurudisha pesa wapi kwa hasla, kwa mivuko. Has Zimbabwe ever woken up? So let them not stop lying to us. Let them tell us one good thing and one good story we want to hear. What is it that they're doing about this corruption menace? How will we just recover half of what we've stolen? Of what they have stolen.
Thank you.
So that we pay off these things that we have here.
Thank you, Mike.
And they save us all this game.
Asante, Mike. Brian in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
I think I want to agree with the senator, and you people, you should interrogate this matter from what the senator said. For you to understand the bottom-up approach, you need to understand the model that we have right now of trickle-down. This is not new money that the bottom-up approach want to redistribute. In fact, in private sector, bottom-up approach is very clear, especially in the equity bank model of banking the unbanked. Equity customers are not those corporate clients. Equity believed in these people, invested in them by giving them loans, and now it has grown to be a big bank. Same thing happened to EABL when they invested in KEG. They contracted small-scale farmer, guaranteed to buy their product. In the meantime, they build a good brand by the name of KEG until a certain finance minister said that they cannot differentiate between sorghum and barley, and they tax it to its death. Now, the fuse comes in when it's in public sector. This bottom-up approach should target the poor, not as safety nets, not as CSO kind of thing, but as a core of the business. First of all, it has started as a philosophy, which is a good thing. Like the same way we had Vision 2030, we had peace, love, and unity, the Nyayo philosophies. Now we have a bottom-up philosophy, which when the government now sit, if the Hustlers government gets to have a government, you go to the third stage of strategies and policy now to reach to the bottom. There's no magic bullet in this. We are saying before you bail out KQ at a tune of 20 billion Kenya shillings, which in fact benefits the few people who leases the aircraft to KQ, that 20 billion, you think also of the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Before you bail out or you inject 100 billion to Mumia Sugar Company, think about those farmers, how you can do it. And a good example is tea farmers. We have a lot of small-scale tea farmers organized in cooperatives, and that's why our tea sector is recognized globally. Somebody arranged those smallholder farmers to a big force, which can be replicated in the entire agricultural sector. Another example of a failed thing is that Uwezo Youth Fund, where they used to give collateralized loan to groups. And the group dynamic is very difficult to organize. What you can do, for example, in hawkers, you've talked about hawkers. Hawkers should form maybe part of cooperative. Government can inject money to train them, to give them capacity, the same way other cooperatives have been doing. Then maybe you can give them one license. If you belong to a cooperative, all a hawker needs is one badge that I belong to this cooperative. Maybe the cooperative can be paying something small to the government, but we should decriminalize this stuff of treating small-scale people as not Kenyans. The trickle-down effect is supposed to create jobs. You're supposed to give tax incentive to those big corporations in the hope that they'll invest back in the country. But what do? Look at Safaricom. Now it has gone to invest in Ethiopia, our money. But these small-scale people are on the demand side of the chain. The government now is focusing on the supply side.
Brian, you should have been the one explaining all these things with
Murkomen is my friend. We're in the same team. I'm Higgins. He knows me.
Thank you very much, Brian.
You know, the demand side is the one that stimulates the economy. Because if you give me 10,000 and I have immediate needs, I'll go buy something and the money will move. But you give one person 2 billion shillings, they will stash it in Cayman Island there.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. It's 23 minutes to 10. Let's take a break and take a look at traffic and the weather. And then you'll respond to some of those questions that have been asked. Yeah, many people are asking questions as well. Murkomen, if you do not tell us how you are going to deal with corruption, the current theft of public funds, then all you're saying is hot air. What you'll just be creating is a new model to steal and perpetuate corruption. You've got to respond to that. That's the same thing that Dr. Mike was asking you. And then there's somebody else who's saying, I don't understand why these people are not understanding. Bottom up is very clear. Kutoka chini, juu.
Yeah, simple.
What is not, what should be confusing you is tialala and tibim.
Chini kwenda juu.
Questions that were raised. So, for example, in the first, where you say that you are actively participating in the governance of this country, first 4 years of the Jubilee administration, Galana Kulalu, laptops, dams were initiated, and all these things that turned out to be some corruption scandals, others are not. And the whole issue of corruption that has been there in this whole administration. So, first of all, what role or what part of that corruption do you want to claim? And two, how do you want to deal with corruption in the future?
First, we must. You cannot hide or pretend to defend any form of corruption from NYS, from all these up to recently the allegations of KEMSA and all these other corruption. Do you know what drives that corruption? Trickle down. Can I tell you how? Trickle-down economics is high-intensive capital investment. So if you are doing a road of 80 billion, between overpass, or you're doing an SGR of 350 billion, it's easy for you to steal 2 or 3 billion and very difficult to investigate and notice than if you are doing an investment in a village of 100,000. Or investing in a cooperative society of 1 million. So part part of the hidden corruption is in the capital-intensive projects. You know, these ones of 10 billion, 20, 30, 40. And I'm not saying it is something to be condoned. I'm trying to say, first of all, by going for bottom, it's an enabler. The trickle-down economics is an enabler. The big corporations, the drivers of this corruption is not the mama mboga, is not the border guy, is not the small subsistence farmer or small-scale traders. It is driven by the bigger corporations, the big men in the economic sector. And that's where corruption is hidden. If you look at what Brian gave as an example of KQ, you go bail out a company like KQ, you put there 20 billion, you know, and you're not explaining to us, are we bailing out a public sector or a private sector, or the people who are leasing the equipment to the company. You go to Mumias, how many times has it been bailed out? If you go to this other company in Webuye, Pan Pepper, how much money have we put without the company coming up? Yet, next door, in the case of Mumias, next door, a private investor comes to put up a sugar company and it's doing very well. So meaning that it is not the sugar milling and the sugar business that is doing badly, it's the management structure and the amount of money that has been put there. So we are saying, first of all, as an answer to that corruption issue, have a bottom-up decision-making process, that's a governance, that makes money more accountable. If you look at CDF as a model, corruption is less. It's not like it's not there. It's lesser in CDF because the decision-making is made by the people at the local level. It's even lesser. In my county, 40% of the development funds are given to all the wards. Again, corruption is lesser because that money is decided by the villagers at the local level. And they're able to say, this road, no, this road cannot be more than 1 million shillings. Cannot be in this. So accountability is achieved it's from bottom up. As an answer to that corruption issue, we are going to distribute investment to a smaller and lower cadre of the economy across the country.
Someone
but number two, of course,
that creates more opportunities for stealing. Somebody who is intent on stealing, then they just have more opportunity. All those examples you've given.
I'm just saying. CDF, I'm just saying. First, it's not going to eliminate.
Fund,
it will
Kenya
minimize.
Rural Roads Authority, right? We have corruption scandals at Kera.
Correct.
Because they're doing small roads, you know, now those ones, what did you call them? The low volume
feeder roads,
low
volume
sealed roads right? Across the country. Very many contracts being given out. What have we seen? Corruption scandals coming out of Kera, and even money laundering allegations coming out of those small road projects.
But it is not, Eric, as comparable to having a one project of 80 billion. Or saying, you know, secret contracts of building a bullet factory of 4 billion. It's not. The opportunity to steal in a contract of 5 million is lesser. I mean, you can see.
No, the opportunity is not less. It's the amount that is less, Mheshimiwa.
No, not just the amount. You see, the accountability mechanism for that smaller road, and especially where the decision has been made at local level, is higher than the ones that is done in 10th floor of a building in Nairobi. Where you do not have that accountability. We have never had the public participation is not there, and if it is even done, it is cosmetic. But the ones that are distributed to smaller entities, and I'm not saying there will be zero corruption. But I'm just saying you minimize. That is one example.
But Mheshimiwa, the public participation at that level is actually dependent on you, our elected leaders. That is where it's delegated power, but at
that higher level.
Yes,
correct.
You're talking about the higher level projects with lots of money.
Correct.
I can't go and ask them.
Correct.
But you,
as the representative,
the person I have elected representing me, you have the power.
Oversight.
So it's not as though the oversight doesn't exist. It does exist. But the problem is compliance with people who are at your level.
Correct.
If you're talking about the problem, again,
we are still part of the problem. That's a fact.
Please carry on.
No, that's true. So you are perfectly in order, Charles. That part of the problem of corruption in the country and why it is thriving and why some of these things are going through is that accountability for us, especially those who are in parliament, have not carried out our oversight responsibility properly. But let me go back to a corruption issue.
Yes.
The other thing is that there has been a lot of interference in terms of the institutions that are fighting corruption in this country to carry out political persecutions and targeted corruption investigations on so and so. It is not a miracle to know in this country that if today I was so and so was a certain governor was to join William Ruto, he would investigate it tomorrow. I mean, and with trumped up charges and so forth. What we are going to do in the Hustler government is to leave those institutions to do their work independently. If we are going to grow this institution to the level where, at least even if it's not to other global levels, to the level South Africa has reached, where to give them credit, their DCI equivalent is a bit independent. The police, even though they are within the police system,
so how will
they
you
perform more.
How will you make sure that they are independent?
By ensuring that you give them more resources and make sure that the institution of DCI is independent from interference by the state.
How will you do that?
No, by promising Kenyans that we are not going to pick up the president is not going to pick up phone call and say investigate so, don't investigate so and so.
Mheshimiwa, the South African model which we like quoting, you can't quote South Africa without completely giving the background that explains how that economy was built. It was on the backs of the majority Africans and with a skewed system of government that disenfranchised the bulk of its population.
That's true.
In the same way we talk about the Chinese Revolution and what it has done, and we forget that when Mao and his group came up with the idea, the cost on human lives to get them to the point where they could do what they're doing now. How many of you here have heard of a town called Yu in China?
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
YIWU. YIWU. It is the largest market for small-scale businesses on the planet. It was farmland. It was farmland, change of user, it became that. There are 5.5 million square meters of shops and businesses. But you look at that as a success, but you forget the cost of getting China to exactly where it is from today. It was, yes. Now, why am I bringing China into this discussion? They were also predominantly a rural economy.
That's true.
For the longest time.
That's true.
And suffered poverty that we in Kenya can't even begin to imagine. Here you are talking about changing Kenya, and I'm focusing on, again, the bulk of the population of this country is still in the rural areas. Even someone who doesn't understand economics knows that in the absence of a certain form of industrialization, the lives of these people will not change.
Correct.
That's why I asked the question earlier on. Yes, they are farmers. But what value addition processes, as you look at the various regions, are you going to say, folks, this is what you're good at. This is what we will do. This is how we'll go about it. So that the money that you're talking about, that 100 million per constituency, when I ask about the structure, you can tell me the value addition is going to be in this and this and this, so that, not immediately, but in the next, because it can't be immediate.
That's true.
What the Jubilee government has done, to its credit, it has followed up on the infrastructure project that the Kibaki government began. And it's because in the absence of this infrastructure, all these things we're talking about cannot happen.
Correct.
So even as you talk about the roads and what have you. So I'm going back to the question I asked earlier on. The hustle narrative is an empowerment narrative. And it makes sense as an empowerment narrative. Even if you have a policy document, even if you say you have a manifesto, but you cannot clearly explain how you are going to lift people from this poverty that they have and how you're going to shape and change the economies of these counties right up to the basics. If you can't say that and all you're saying is that this is what you hope to do, then unfortunately, Mheshimiwa, you will fall into the category of just another politician saying political niceties. And that will be really unfortunate.
Before I respond to Charles, there are two other questions. But let me just quickly say to Charles that I have said that over and over again. The problem with you is that you want us to exhaust every sector in this show.
No, I want a structure. I've asked that question many times.
Yeah.
That structure, what I've heard are platitudes.
Yeah.
We're hoping to do this. Structure.
What do you mean by structure?
Good question. What I mean by structure is what I started off with by saying, in the agricultural sector, we will revive these institutions because they can do this. And you name them.
Correct.
In the Industrial sector.
Is that the structure you want?
But those are the structures.
No, that is not the structure, as I understand.
What do you understand by structure?
If you are talking about, if you are talking about structure, it will have to be specific to every item that informs the bottom-up economics. For example, I talked about the fund, and I told you capital access is very important when you want to spur the economy from the local level. And I said we are promising in the beginning to create 100 million fund in every constituency to assist local farmers, local traders, local hustlers to be able to access capital to grow their businesses and their agriculture and so forth. How are you going to do that? Create a legal framework that enables that fund to be accessed by these people, borrowed at a concessional rates.
So you're thinking like a lawyer.
No, that's
because
true.
You are a lawyer.
No, we start from there, because if you are going to say legal structure, you are going to talk about, first of all, the structure. It has to be legal.
I didn't say legal structure.
It has to be legal. It has to be.
The legal
because if you are going to borrow,
is
if you are
part
going to
of the
say,
structure,
that's true. But if you are going to say you are going to have an AFC that's going to give loan to farmers,
Mheshimiwa,
that's to have a legal structure.
We'll start with the legal structure. That's part of the structure.
Yeah.
Then with that,
I don't think, Charles, you have not understood me. You have understood. What you want is an exhaustion of everything we are going to do. We're not going to do it today. I've given you a number, myriads of examples of the things we want to do. If you want us to exhaust the manifesto, I can come the next show. Then we move to the next.
What city is asking for, and which is what we've asked for, is specifics.
I have given you how many specifics?
So there's one specific that you've given. 100 million shillings going to every constituency.
A legal structure.
I told you about establishment of cottage industries.
Yes. Now let's
processing plants. How are you going to do that? I told you about contracted farming, making sure that the farmers have a market for their produce.
Those are examples.
Yeah, I gave you a number of examples. So many.
Of what is currently happening.
Well, not necessarily at a large scale. It's happening in bits and pieces of parts of the country.
Okay.
Now, and that's why. So then the other questions we were discussing, will we fight counties? Of course not. My track record, let me speak for myself first. My track record for fighting for devolution and more resources to counties speaks for itself. In fact, it's part of the reason why Jubilee administration were tired of me as a majority leader. Because the last action we did was to go to court to force the national government to give money to county. And I said the buck stops with the president. You know, the current president is saying he's going to work. The current deputy, who is our presidential candidate, is promising that he's going to change this from bottom up. And if it's going to be bottom up, it means that the counties are at the heart of the bottom as we come up to the national level, meaning that there will be inter-county. There are a lot of inter-county relations in so many of these things. Part of the informing documents that we are working with is already CIDPs, the County Integrated Development Plans that are in the country, that were written by very intelligent people in this nation and gathering dust because implementation is the issue. So if you ask me, what are you going to do different? It's because of our resolve and commitment to do things different. It's about the person who is in the office.
The leadership.
And then the question of dams and all these structures, and I've already explained that in terms of the corruption, but it is still important for this country to make sure that we invest in not just rain-fed agriculture, but irrigated agriculture so that we can sustain production throughout the year. Because the problem we're having at the moment is because the vagaries of weather, climate change are affecting our production. In fact, integral to our plan in terms of bottom-up approach is ensuring that we cannot succeed to deal with these small-scale farmers without dealing with matters of climate change. And then the fight trade, Idi Amin. I find it very strange that Kenyans give very silly examples every time they discuss their country. They want to talk about Zimbabwe, Somalia, Idi Amin, even somebody who never understands what Idi Amin did. In fact, I don't even know where he collected in his piece of history the money that Idi Amin put in people's pockets and so forth. Was it an economic model? Was it cash transfer? You know, he must let's appreciate first what we are discussing. And I hate when usually we remind people that Malaysia was at the same level with us, Asian Tigers. You go to it is because we should mark ourselves with institutions or places we want to go. We
but you can also learn from mistakes that other
we
people
learn
have
from
made.
mistakes.
Absolutely.
We learn from mistakes, but let's not go and collect.
In the neighborhood.
No, let's not do cherry picking of the negatives for purpose of fighting an idea whose time has come. Finally, yes, we need to remove this criminal mentality, the criminalization of, this trickle-down trickle-down economics has made corporations so powerful that they have been able to lobby the state to and pass laws and force the state to pass laws that makes people like hawkers to look like criminals.
They're all
people
criminals.
who are selling goods in Muthui and other places as they look like they are violating intellectual property. So I'm saying ours, because hustlers themselves will be on the table. Will be on the table.
Next
we
time,
will undo all these
you'll tell us how the hustlers come to the table.
These guys want
20 seconds to the top of the hour. City.
A socialist state is what I'm hearing these guys talking about.
Today's proverb?
The chief's wealth is in his people.
Kipchumba, Murkomen, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Look forward to having you coming again next time.
Yes.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.